Hello everyone, TimeToGrind here, and today I wanted to talk about Omori. And Omori is an absolute masterpiece. Every now and then I play a game that I truly think belongs in a museum as an example of how the medium of games can be artwork, and I've previously said that Undertale, Gris, and Inmost are all examples of this, and now without a shadow of a doubt, Omori makes that list. If I had beat this game in 2020 when it came out, it easily would have been my top game of 2020. And I'm going to go ahead right off the bat and say if you have not played this game, you should definitely do that before watching this review. I'm going to be spoiling a lot of things about the game in this video. This is one of those games that if you're interested in playing it at all, you just need to stop watching or reading any sort of review or anything about the game and just go in blind. I beg you, if you think you are going to play it at any moment, stop watching this video. Don't care if it hurts my watch time, I want you to enjoy it fully. So this is your last spoiler warning. I'm not going to do any major spoilers until the end of the video, but I will still be spoiling stuff, so last chance for to get out of the video while you still can. But either way, let's just jump into the review of a game that I cannot stop obsessing about. So Omori is a psychological horror RPG maker game where you first start playing as Omori and you're in this white space with some random items. And when you leave, you find yourself in this colorful room and you find your friends Aubrey, Kel, and Hiro, and they're all playing cards together. And already the game's starting to be a little creepy in subtle ways. Like if you look back in the keyhole of the door you just came from, you see this creepy black figure. But then you and your friends leave the room and go outside to the playground, but you still see glimpses of that black figure every now and then, and you eventually meet your older sister Mari and your other friend Basil. And you go to Basil's house and you're all looking at pictures, and then all of a sudden you are returned to the white space in this real creepy transition, and you then have to stab yourself with a dull knife to continue. This then brings you to the real world where Omori is actually a character named Sunny, and apparently you and your mom are moving away and she's been gone setting up the new house, and it's all you alone in this creepy house, and you keep seeing the dark shadow figure, and you go back to sleep, which brings you back to the dream world where Basil is now missing and you and your friends have to go on an adventure to try to find him. And so the game kind of keeps switching between this dream world and the real world. And the friends you have in the dream world were your childhood friends that you spent all your time with as a kid. In the real world, you start to learn that your older sister passed away, and this kind of split up the friend group a little bit. You all kind of started to grow apart from each other and were affected by the death of Mari really heavily. One of your friends, Aubrey, even seems to have found a new group of friends and are kind of bullying people, including Basil. And as you keep playing through the game, you keep learning more and more about the story, and it starts to get way more intense. And I'll talk about the ending of the game later in the video, but for now I want to talk about some of the gameplay. Because I've kind of only been talking about the story so far, and that's because it's kind of one of the most important parts about the game. And when I first started playing the game, I knew there was going to be a lot of the dark and intense stuff going on, so I was kind of trying to rush past a lot of the game, especially the dream world parts at the beginning, because I wanted more crazy stuff to happen. And when combat first started happening in the dream world, at first I thought it was going to just be like Undertale, where you could fight or save anyone, but the more I played, the more I realized that this game is unique in its own way, with its own unique combat and everything. And the combat is actually pretty cool. So you have your four main party members, Omori, Aubrey, Kel, and his older brother Hiro. They all have different moves and stats, but there's also a huge focus on emotions in this game. So there are some moves or attacks that can make your characters or the enemies happy, sad, or angry. And each of the emotions has its own unique mechanics. So like if you're sad, your defense goes up, but your speed goes down. And they're effective against each other kind of in a sort of counteracting way. So if you're sad, you're more effective against happy enemies. Happy characters are more effective against angry characters, and angry characters are more effective against sad characters. And also, some moves focus on these emotions. So Omori has an attack called Stab, where it always deals a crit, and it also ignores the enemy defense if Omori is sad himself. So you might want to have him use his ability Sad Poem to make himself sad first. And at first I kind of just ignored all of these emotion mechanics and wrote them off as a gimmick, but the further into the game and the dream world I got, I started to love it. You can kind of start to make different builds on the characters as they all learn a ton of new moves, and you have to choose which four to use on each character, and you can equip different weapons and charms on each character as well. So as an example, late game in combat, I would start off by having Aubrey make her and Omori happy, happy. I would then make Kel annoy the enemy to make them angry, and then I would have Omori either use a mock ability, which would deal damage and reduce the enemy's attack since they were angry, or I would use Lucky Slice, which would deal more damage because Omori himself was happy. And then because of the emotion matchups, because happy characters would deal more damage to angry characters, I dealt even more damage. Also, there is a meter that fills up the more you get hit, and you can use that meter to do follow-up moves from other characters. So say Aubrey attacks, you have a couple of seconds to have her look at one of her friends, and then they'll do a follow-up move. And these are all specific follow-up moves that depend on who you look at. So it could be like Hero healing you a little bit, or Kel dealing damage with you. So if you remember what follow-up moves there are, these can be super useful. And also, if you save all of it until it gets to 10 and Omori attacks, you can release a special friendship attack that has all you and your friends attacking together to deal a ton of damage. And there are so many different strats and builds that I could see working that it really makes the combat super fleshed out and meaningful. Also, the further I got in the dream world, it really made me start to appreciate the game not only for its dark and intense story moments, but also for the crazy adventures you go on with your friends in the dream world. You go to crazy places like a princess castle where you and your friends get imprisoned and then have to escape, or an underground mole town, or inside a whale, and more. And all of these areas and adventures you and your friends go on are filled to the brim with charm. There are interesting and unique characters that all have different things to say. There are side quests if you want to do them, there's unique enemies to fight, and then there are also just a lot of things to learn between your friends the further you go. And also, the game does something really subtle that goes a long way. In a lot of areas, there's a mirror that you can look at and just see your friends all together. There's also certain areas where you can just have fun with your friends, like playing a ball pit or having a tea party. And they don't affect gameplay, it's not even a mini game, but it just makes you grow attached to the characters and make you really feel like you are a part of this close group of friends. Also, the boss fights in this game are absolutely incredible. They all are extremely unique in terms of how they play out, and the characters themselves that you fight are all memorable, and they're normally accompanied by some incredible music. And I just want to touch on the soundtrack real fast. This is hands down one of my favorite soundtracks of all time. I just want to spend like 30 seconds playing a couple clips of the music for you guys. And just all of these tracks are so good and match the atmosphere of the game. And going along with that, the art style is also a huge draw to the game to me as well. When you're in the world and just walking around, it kind of looks similar to a standard RPG Maker game. You know, it's very colorful, don't get me wrong, it looks really, really good, but it's nothing compared to when you get into combat or just have close-ups of your friends or, you know, certain characters. It's in this hand-drawn like art style that is so good. Also, the backgrounds in the boss fights in particular look so pretty as well. You could take a screenshot of almost any of those parts and it would make a great poster or wallpaper. And so you'll be in these incredibly fun and colorful adventures with your friends, and then out of nowhere things will start to get really intense all of a sudden, and then you'll get pulled back into the real world where there's this whole plot progressing. And beyond all of the intense and dark things that happen, there is a big theme of childhood friendship and how friends kind of grow apart. And as someone that is personally going through that a bit as I'm starting to grow apart from some of my friends as we become adults, it really resonated with me. And now I want to touch on how the main plot progresses and how it ends. So if you're still watching but haven't played the game yet, this is your last chance to not get the ending spoiled. I mean, there's some major spoilers, so I am absolutely begging you once again to just play the game, click out of the review and stuff like that if you want to avoid these major spoilers. I don't normally spoil these games as I want people to experience them, but I have to talk about it because it's so good. So in the real world, Aubrey had apparently stolen Basil's photo album, which had pictures of them all that Basil took when they were younger and all friends. So you're spending your last couple of days before you move away trying to confront Aubrey about that and get it back for Basil. You find out that your older sister Mari apparently killed herself and no one knows why. She was super happy and uplifting, and it makes it even more touching as Mari is obviously in the dream world. She is kind of your safe space and a checkpoint as you can heal from her picnics and save leave next to her, and she also gives you advice and encouragement. And you start learning how this affected everyone, and obviously it messed everyone up a lot. You find out that Hiro was also dating Mari, and also just everyone was super good friends with her. And the more you interact with Basil in the real world, you start to notice that something is off. He references the darkness that he shares with you, and at a point you see some spooky heavy stuff taking him over, and it's sort of some intense, depression and mental illness kind of themes that are really, really heavy. And one of the last times you go into the dream world and you and your friends are still trying to find where Basil went, everything starts getting really intense and dark. And a dark version of Basil starts talking about how you have been running from the truth the whole time. And then back in the real world, it's implied Basil's grandmother dies, and Basil locks himself in his room and is not responding to anyone. It is really intense because obviously there is something going on we don't know, and he has previously talked about some things that make you think he might have committed suicide or might commit suicide. So you and your friends stay the night in case he needs help. And you go into the dream world one last time, and you slowly learn through some extremely intense gameplay and visuals that in the past you got in an argument with Mari and pushed her down the stairs, accidentally killing her. Basil was with you, and you guys decide to make it look like Mari killed herself by hanging her dead body on a tree in your backyard. And neither you or Basil have told anyone this entire time that you guys caused it, and that's what's been eating up both of you this entire time. That dark figure you kept seeing was actually what Mari's dead body looked like when you both looked back at it from the house afterwards. And when you wake up, depending on what you do, there are several different endings that can happen. If you just go back to sleep, Basil ends up killing himself and everyone is distraught, and you go back home and try to sleep. And if you pick up a knife beforehand, you'll end up killing yourself as well. Instead, if when you wake up you go and approach Basil, he'll let you into his room and he starts to say really dark and creepy stuff, and then he attacks you. You both get sent to a hospital, and Sunny falls asleep and you fight Omori. You can't win, and when you lose it asks you if you want to continue or not. If you give up, then when you wake up, Omori takes control of Sunny's mind and he walks up to the roof and jumps off. But if you continue, you'll defeat Omori, and when you wake up in the hospital, you find Basil and all your friends, and you're finally able to tell them the truth. And that ending is the technical true ending. It's the one I got as well, which I'm really happy about. There's also this whole other playthrough that I want to do where you apparently just stay in your house every day, and so I don't know too much about it because I don't want to get any of that spoiled for me. But either way, hands down, this is just one of the best games I have ever played. It's hard to explain how much I truly value this game and how much of a masterpiece it is to me. It affected me greatly with its themes of friendship and friends growing apart and grief and fear and everything else it tackles. The story is incredible and memorable. The adventures you go on with your friends are memorable in their own charming way. The game has deep RPG elements in the combat and the items you can find. The art style with its hand-drawn pieces are breathtaking. The soundtrack is magical and how well it ties everything together. There's just a ton of charm to the game, a lot of secrets to find, and it just feels like a living world, and it is so good. This is a game that I know I will still be thinking about for years and years to come, and it's a game that I would recommend to anyone that is looking for a deep experience like this. And I know that this is a way longer review than I normally make, but I just had to give an in-depth review and analysis of the game as it just means so much to me. I hope you all enjoyed my review and analysis of Omori, and if you've played the game, I would love to personally hear about your experiences with it, so let me know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this review, then consider subscribing and ringing that bell to see more reviews like this in the future. But either way, I'm going to continue thinking about how great of a game this is for the next 50 years of my life, and I hope you do as well, and I'll see you all next time.